What is going on, everyone? This is Miles with Windows Central Gaming, and welcome to the 65th episode of Xbox Chaturdays. Today, I am stoked to be joined once again by Windows Central's very own Samuel Tolbert. Sam, how are you doing on this fine Saturday, my dude?
I'm doing all right, Miles. I'm doing all right. Could be better, but could be a lot worse.
Okay.
So
Doing all right. I'll
we're
take it.
hanging in
All
there.
right. That's good enough for
Mhm.
me. That's good enough to get the show going. We have a lot to talk about today. There's been some recent developments, very recent developments regarding Halo
Extremely.
Infinite and its roadmap, the future of Halo.
Mhm.
Definitely want to
Right.
dive into that. We're going to be talking about Sega's quote unquote super game initiative. We're going to be talking about our impressions on Evil Dead the game. We're going to be talking about Xbox console sales and VG charts. Xbox and PlayStation dipping their toes into in-game advertising and free-to-play games, and a whole lot more. But before we get into all of that, Sam, for the amazing people listening on audio services and watching live on youtube.com, let them know who you are and where they can find you.
Yeah, so obviously I'm Samuel Tolbert. I'm a freelance writer, writing over at Windows Central and its sister sites, covering Xbox, PC, news, previews, reviews, editorials, all that good stuff. Lots of good stuff always in the works over there. Even if there isn't a lot of Xbox news, specifically, we make it work. We make it work. I'm teasing. This is always a dry season, right? We're in the build up to the time that was E3. It's always a little thinner around there. It is what it is. We'll get news soon enough. But yeah, RT, come yell at me over there. Yeah, fun time.
All right. Yeah, like you said, we're getting close to the summer game mess, as Jeff Grubb calls it, and a lot of these companies are obviously preparing their big presentations for the year, and Xbox loves their big kind of annual presentations, so I'm sure they're saving a lot of their biggest, juiciest drops for that. And in the meantime, yeah, we have some other stuff to dive into. Some quick housekeeping before we dive into the topics of today's show. If you are listening on audio services, go ahead and take a second, leave a review for the show. We are a little late to the game for the audio versions, and we want to make sure the show gets out to as many people as possible. Some other housekeeping: there will not be an episode of Xbox Chaturdays next week, as I will be on a little vacation, taking a nice trip to lovely Seattle to see Jerry Cantrell, meet some new people, and visit my family. I haven't seen my mom and my dad in several years, and taking a little trip to go visit them. So no episode next week, just as a heads up there. All right, Sam, the first topic I want to dive into today is Sega's Super Game Initiative. And this has been an interesting development because for years, there have been diehard, longtime vocal Sega fans saying, why don't you bring back Crazy Taxi? Why don't you bring back Jet Set Radio? And a report from Bloomberg came out that basically said, Sega's thinking about it. Sega potentially has some plans to do big budget reboots of Crazy Taxi and Jet Set Radio, and potentially some more, inspired by the success of games like Fortnite. And they are dabbling in ways to basically bring these franchises back with online multiplayer and other forms of media, and make what they're calling quote unquote super games based on their beloved IPs. So, Sam, were you a Sega kid? Does hearing about Crazy Taxi coming back or Jet Set Radio coming back,
I was
does that
not really
do
a
anything?
Sega kid.
Okay. Yeah, that's
I wasn't really a Sega kid. Like, I know what Sega is. I respect their titles. Obviously, I played some of them. I did play like Jet Set Radio Future. Very familiar with that on the original Xbox. That was fun. But I didn't grow up with the Dreamcast. I didn't grow up with the Genesis or anything like that. So it doesn't do anything for me personally. But I do respect that this is going to do a lot for other people. A lot of Xbox fans, in particular, like have their roots as Sega fans. They played on the Dreamcast. They wish the Dreamcast was, more successful than it was. That is what it is. So I can understand the appeal to other people. I think my curiosity is more piqued in terms of how Sega intends to do this. Because chasing Fortnite it's not exactly a small task, right? It's not exactly a small thing to just say, oh yeah, we're going to take these IP from how many years ago, and this is going to be competing up there on the big stage. Okay, all right, we'll see how it goes. We'll see how that plays out. I can definitely understand what they're trying to do, though. Sega is seeing the future. They know that they don't have a big online title, and they want multiple things to try and take a stab at it. I know these are two parts of the Super Game Initiative. The other part that we've known about for a long time is evidently some shooter that's being developed by a European studio. We think it's Creative Assembly, but we're not 100% sure about that. I think it's interesting. I think we're really intent to evolve it.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what this actually ends up looking like from Sega's perspective, because yeah, we've heard countless publishers talk about, chasing the success of Fortnite, chasing that Fortnite money, and basically, using that as a metric for success. And Fortnite is one of the most successful games of all time. It makes so much money, and it's way harder than it's way harder to match that than just to say we're going to take Jet Set Radio and Crazy Taxi and try to mirror the success of that. Because, Fortnite, it came at a time when battle royales were on the up and up, but there wasn't one that really had wide appeal, mainstream appeal. We had PUBG, which was very successful, very popular, but it was arguably more of a hardcore, quote unquote, experience. And Fortnite kind of bridged that gap and made a battle royale that gave the hardcore fans what they wanted, but still appealed to a wider audience. And so when I'm looking at Crazy Taxi, when I'm looking at Jet Set Radio, what on earth are those going to be when they're like massive free-to-play online multiplayer games? What does that look like to you, Sam? Like, how does that even work?
I think Jet Set Radio makes more sense to me than Crazy Taxi. You have different characters, you have a lot of different colors. Like, I think Jet Set Radio, and I instantly understand the Fortnite connection. I instantly see, like, oh, you can sell lots of costumes, you can have different cosmetics, you can have crossovers, you can have wild graffiti events. Like, I don't know the exact particulars, but I definitely see it more for Jet Set Radio than I do Crazy Taxi. Crazy Taxi is a little like, okay, what are we doing here? 100 taxis on an island. You're trying to take out Uber drivers as you go. Like, I don't know. We'll see how that goes. Is Lyft the big bad villain in this game? Crazy Taxi is definitely rougher for me to imagine. But Jet Set Radio, I can see sort of like a shared PvPvE maybe experience. Like an online world, you pop in, you help others complete tournaments, quests, but you go up against other players as well. I can kind of see that. I can kind of see it.
I agree.
Now, if that's going to be successful, that's different. That's a completely different question. I couldn't possibly answer that.
Yeah, I can definitely see Jet Set Radio, that formula translating to a big online multiplayer game. Like you said, you can do races, you can maybe even incorporate some Fall Guys-ish battle royale elements where you're grinding and trying to survive in these environments that are shifting and changing. But yeah, Crazy Taxi, that's the one where I am curious to see what that would look like. I imagine it would be, it's Crazy Taxi. The entire point of the game is delivering people, so you got to make it like a competitive delivery experience. So I'm really curious to see what that means for them. But it is exciting to hear that publishers like Sega are looking into some of these IP that people have been, wanting to see return for quite some time, and really trying to evaluate how they bring them back in the modern day and make them exciting for a modern audience. Because they could just do a remake. You could remake Jet Set Radio, people would be excited. You could remake Crazy Taxi, people would be excited. But I think they realize that's probably not going to pull in an entirely new audience, and maybe this pursuit of Fortnite could end up paying off. If they're free to play, I will absolutely at least give them a try. And I'm morbidly curious, like you said, to see what the hell Crazy Taxi is in the year of our Lord 2023 and beyond. All right. Another big topic that's kind of boiled up in the last couple weeks it involves Xbox and PlayStation experimenting with ad platforms in free-to-play games. And we've had some conversations about Xbox because they were the first to come out and say that they were the first to report. They were the first to be reported on that they were working on an in-game ad platform for free-to-play games. And this was basically just Microsoft looking at publishers and saying, hey, we understand you are looking for ways to diversify your revenue stream in free-to-play games. So here's a platform for in-game advertising. And it's now come out that PlayStation also plans to have a platform for in-game advertising in free-to-play games. So obviously, on the surface, hearing these details puts players on edge. In-game advertising, it's not a new idea, but every time it's in a game, people make fun of it. We had Duracell in Alan Wake. We had the ramen noodles in Final Fantasy 15. Like, it's just a meme every single time. So people are, justifiably a little on edge. But based on the limited details we have, what are your thoughts on these plans? Is this offensive to you? Do you really care? Do you think this is going to be egregious?
So, based on the very limited details we have, and it is very limited from these Business Insider, I think it was Business Insider reported in both cases that this was happening. Okay. The example they gave was that for in an online free-to-play racing game, so not something like Forza where it's paid or on Game Pass, I presume. Maybe I can't even think of any free-to-play racing games that come to mind right now. Rocket League isn't racing. Anyways, the example they gave is that a billboard on a highway might have a real ad in it, not some fake made up for the game ad. Like, it's a real ad that was sold because the company won the bid for it. If that's all this is, I can roll my eyes and I can deal with it. All right, fine. If I'm in Call of Duty Warzone 2, right, the next generation of Call of Duty Warzone, if I'm shooting dudes and rolling down Main Street in a pan, and there's actually a real ad for Code Red Mountain Dew, you know what? Fine. Whatever. It's okay. All right. But the problem is, and I understand people's fears here, there is a slippery slope when it comes to corporations. Let's be real, Miles, corporations like seeing that graph go up. They're not happy with steady revenue. They're not happy with steady success. And this
90
is not
degrees, baby, or bust.
They all do this. They all do this. They want more growth. They want more money. If this is a success, how do we know Microsoft and Sony are going to keep it in just free-to-play games? And on top of that, how do we know that they're not going to make it more egregious? How do we know that it isn't going to be even more ads? I'll tell you this. If I ever load into a game lobby and there's an autoplay video ad, I'm out. I'm out instantly. I will never touch it again. It's not happening. We're not doing this. I deal with that way too much. I hate pop-up ads. I hate auto-playing video ads with every fiber in my soul. So we got to see how this plays out, but I understand people being concerned. I totally get it.
I totally get it as well, because what was it? Was it NBA? Was the NBA 2K the infamous example where there was straight up ads, video ads within the game? And people had to just, that was a paid premium product, and there were ads playing within the game and stuff like that completely disrupts the experience. Nobody wants that. That is very free-to-play mobile game. That is one of my least favorite things about free-to-play mobile gaming are the ad breaks where, if you want this currency, you have to watch an ad. Or if you want to continue beyond this point, you have to watch an ad. And if it gets to that point, yeah, that's going to be a really big problem. I also wonder, like you said, if there's just billboards within games, whatever. If there's a bus standee in Call of Duty, like you said, that has the Mountain Dew logo on it, whatever. But I'm also wondering if it's going to go beyond that. If cool, quote unquote, hip gamer brands are going to start partnering with people like Rockstar to put, let's say, the example that comes to mind, and I think it's a joke, but I think it's also a scary possibility, is we're going to see Taco Bell. We're going to see Taco Bell, the chain, in games like Grand Theft Auto 6. And you're going to be able to go inside a Taco Bell in Grand Theft Auto 6, and if you have linked your Rockstar account, you're going to get a discount code for the new Flaming Nacho Chalupa, and you're going to be able to link your DoorDash account to your Rockstar account, and you're going to be able to order delivery Taco Bell to your house from within Grand Theft Auto. That is kind of when I'm thinking about
what this... I'm making that sound cool.
And again, it's a joke, but also... there's probably somebody listening on the marketing side like, oh, word? Shit. Hold on. Let's think about the logistics of what that looks like. And that's, to me, the interesting future of in-game advertising. As gaming gets bigger and bigger and there's more money to be made, there's going to be more and more brands willing to throw down huge money to get their products and brands featured in these games. When you look at Fortnite has so many huge crossovers with all of these huge properties and licenses, and these licenses are willing to, work with Fortnite because of how massive it is. Whereas a lot of, smaller teams could never get Marvel on board. You couldn't have Ghost Rider in Gears of War, for example. There's a lot of energy and excitement there. So I get the hesitations, I get the fears, and I get the concerns. Are there any? I talked about, being able to order Taco Bell within the game. Are there any applications for ads in games that would actually get you excited? I know that's weird to say, but is there any world where this implementation is cool in your eyes? Or at best, is it just, I can ignore it?
I'm trying to keep an open mind here, Miles. I'm trying to open my mind, broaden my horizons. But man, I hate advertising. I just hate it so much. It's very difficult. Honestly, I think what you described with the Taco Bell situation, that is probably the best case scenario. That the best case scenario is probably there being like in a game where there are all these fictitious shops. If you have your accounts linked up perfectly, like, or you could go in and like order a Papa John's pizza or order some Baja Blast, from Taco Bell or something like. That is probably the best case scenario, because everything else I'm trying to think of just sounds so invasive. And I will say, one small shred of good news that I did get out of this report is that it seems like these companies are very concerned about customer data. It seems like Microsoft does not want these to be like targeted ads. It's more of like a general blast. It's a shotgun. It's not a sniper rifle. Want an ad that hits lots of people. They don't want companies coming in and like, oh, these are your Xbox Live habits. These are the games you play. This is the kind of ad we're going to serve you. It doesn't seem like they want to go that route. And I do appreciate that, because I'll tell you what, that's another big red flag if either of these companies go in and try doing something like that.
Yeah, that is a very
no, I
fair
think what
point.
you described is the best case scenario.
If it is just blanket advertising, whatever. It's, again, I understand as gaming gets bigger, we're going to see more and more people experiment with it. And chances are I will never be stoked about it. But as long as it isn't what you're touching on here, where they clearly have your data and they're using your data to try to sell you things within a game, that stuff is way more egregious, and that stuff is way more concerning. But if it is just these massive brands, Papa John's, Taco Bell, Mountain Dew, whatever the case might be, I'm not too concerned about, Mountain Dew trying to siphon all my data. They're just trying to sell their, God, what did you see? It's Mountain Dew Flaming Hot just came out. Like, that's a thing that exists.
Wait, what? Seriously?
Yeah, you can. I haven't tried it.
I'll have to look this up.
I will. I'm a sucker. I will try any of the new Mountain Dew flavors, but there is a Mountain Dew Flaming Hot. PSA, if you were unaware and you want to just absolutely destroy your gut this weekend, Mountain Dew Flaming Hot has hit store shelves. Hashtag, this is not an ad. I just saw it on Twitter and I just couldn't believe it was a real thing. Oh, shout out to all the amazing people joining us live on this fine Saturday. If you are watching live on youtube.com/Windows Central Gaming, hit that like button, share the video out, drop your thoughts in the chat. If you are listening on audio services, be sure to take a second and drop us a review. I get to super chat before we dive into our next topic here from Mr. Joanna Dark. It says hello to the GOAT, Miles Dompier, and Samuel Tolbert. This is how Phantom Dust will come back as a free-to-play game with sandbags and earn ads. Damn. Mr. Joanna Dark constantly trying to crush my dreams of Phantom Dust coming back. And you know what? I know it's not that likely. I know it's probably not in the cards anytime soon, but I will never give up on Phantom Dust, okay? I don't care what, unless Phil Spencer comes out and says that Phantom Dust is dead and is never coming back ever under any circumstances. Until that day happens, I will hold out that shred of hope that I have. Okay? Do you have any games that will never come back but you want to come back? Just lingering?
Games that will never come back that I want to see come back. Never is such a strong word in the gaming industry. Let me chew on that for a bit. Let me chew on that. Never is we've seen some wild things. We've seen like Max Payne is coming back. Come on, no one actually saw that coming. So actually, that probably would have been it if you had asked me that before that announcement. I probably would have said Max Payne. So
Yeah, we are in a time in gaming right now where, I don't want to say anything is possible, but also it seems like really anything is possible, and that's exciting. So yeah, saying never right now, it's a dangerous move because, like you said, we've seen some developments that we never ever would have imagined. So yeah. All right, Sam, we got to talk a little bit about Xbox in Japan. And we've been, a little critical over on Windows Central about Xbox and Japanese developed games, the appeal of the Xbox platform in Japan. I wrote an editorial a couple weeks ago talking about, Xbox's, faults and failings and how they had potential early on and they kind of squandered that potential and they've been clawing and scrapping to get that back. And we've got a little bit of positive news in that regard. Matt Smith, who works for Xbox Publishing in Japan, and took to Twitter this week, and he shared a myriad of job postings that were designed to kind of grow Xbox Publishing in Japan specifically, and mentioned that their team is looking to grow, and they are currently working with, quote, top-class developers on truly groundbreaking products. And a lot of people saw that. Obviously, that is an interesting little nugget for someone in Xbox Publishing to say. And so a lot of people have been speculating on what that is, who that could be. When I replied to this post, Jeff Grubb popped in with a tomorrow is in your hands quote, which is from Death Stranding. And knowing Jeff, this was either a tease based on his Kojima Xbox project reporting or just a massive troll with Jeff. It really can go either way. But what I want to know, Sam, is what are you hoping to see from Xbox Publishing in Japan when they talk about top-class developers and groundbreaking projects? What does that mean for you?
So, Miles, I'm always a little careful, just a little bit, when it comes to job listings, because we know how the language of job listings can be
Quadruple
a
A.
little flowery. A bit exaggerated, just a tiny bit stretched and contorted, and they're trying to get people to apply for a job. It's not the official marketing, and I do wish people kept that in mind all around, not just for this particular situation.
You got to get people excited about to even bother applying. So it needs to sound cool. It needs to sound like something that's going to further your career.
Exactly. It's got to look nice on a resume. That being said, I do think this is genuinely good news, and I do think it's interesting that this is happening at the same time as, Miles, I don't know if you've noticed this, the Xbox Cloud Gaming division at publishing really seems to be ramping up as well. We had Kim Swift, who's head of division, talking at GDC a few weeks back. You've had multiple people get hired, multiple job listings for that division. And that's just one of the teams at publishing. That's not all of publishing altogether. That's just that one division. So I think it's interesting that those are happening at the same time. For me personally, what I want to see is things like the Kojima deal. I think that is literally the perfect example of what Xbox has to do. Because when it comes to deals, when it comes to these games that just like, why is Final Fantasy 16 not coming to Xbox? That's just an immediate one that comes to mind. Why is Forspoken not coming to Xbox? Because unfortunately, it's going to be easier for Sony to get a deal. Microsoft would have to pay far more. I'm not saying they can't. I'm not saying they shouldn't. I'm just saying it will always be easier for Sony to get those deals. Microsoft shouldn't compete in that realm. They should say, okay, fine, do that. We're going to take Kojima Productions and we're going to make a game that only we here at Xbox can make because this is the technology we have. Maybe they go and do that with another Japanese developer. I don't know, just pulling something out of thin air. What if they went to Capcom and said, hey, not an established IP, but come make a new IP with us? We'll publish it. We'll give you the technical resources. Like, we'll work on something completely different than anything you've done before, a cloud-based game. I think you make those kinds of partnerships, you make those kinds of deals, you get people talking about Xbox in Japan, you get Japanese games that can only be played on Xbox platforms. That is the more, dare I use this word, organic route to grow.
Yeah, because we often see the conversations when it comes to timed exclusivity and deals that are in line with that. They're typically negative. People usually on one side or the other are upset about the deal because that means they don't get to play it. But when you are talking to someone like Kojima, who is clearly interested in trying new things, clearly has some ambitions to kind of reevaluate how to design games, how to utilize new tools to make games. If you can sell Kojima on your platform being a place where you can make something that nobody else can offer you, that's got to be exciting. And I'm sure that those were the conversations that went into this reported and rumored deal with Kojima and Xbox. And I've talked about this before as well, but if Kojima comes out and has a glowing experience with Xbox publishing, puts out an amazing game that's well received, that's innovative, and says, like, because of Xbox, and this is going to sound very PR-y, and I don't think he would ever say this, but something to the effect of like, because of Xbox's tools, I was able to create this game that wouldn't be possible elsewhere. If someone like Kojima, a big figure in the gaming industry, can say that about your platform, that is worth so much more than any sort of timed exclusive. And you're going to have other people looking at that and saying, maybe I need to sit down and have a conversation with Xbox and see what they can offer. And again, Capcom, for another example, when we talk about top-class developers, I think Kojima Productions fits that bill. And that could be, again, I'm not saying this is, but that could be why Jeff Grubb was dropping that Death Stranding quote in the replies there to rile everybody up. But that is really exciting. And it shows, again, I've talked about this before, as much as I am critical about certain games skipping the Xbox platform, in recent years, Xbox has really invested in Japan, really invested in Japanese teams, and wants to make sure that, Xbox is a global brand, and Xbox has a global presence everywhere. And if they can get more big, as we see in this list, tweet, top-class developers working for Xbox from Japan, that is going to get more people interested in working with Xbox. And that, like you said, that will lead to growth. It will take time. It's not going to be something that happens overnight, but it is exciting. And it is, it has me way more interested and optimistic about the future of Japanese developed games on the Xbox platform. Super chat from Silent Cypher. Just dropping a pair dancing that says, "You are amazing." Oh, that's just sweet. That's just wholesome. We need some more wholesome energy out in the world. All right, Sam. Let's talk about Halo Infinite. And I know it's a meme at this point, and I know everyone is tired about, talking about Halo Infinite and its shortcomings and blah blah blah. Let me just say, before we go into this topic, in my show notes here, I have the foundation of a very glowing, positive conversation about Halo Infinite. Originally, I was going to talk about how I was stoked that 2 new maps and 3 game modes were coming in Season 2, and how that has me way more excited about the future of Halo, because 2 maps and 3 game modes in 3 months, that's impressive. That's exciting. And we were going to get co-op within that time frame as well. That is a lot of cool content coming. And then, Sam, late Friday, they pulled a classic move where, as everyone's wrapping up on the media side for the day, getting ready to pack it in, they quietly put out a blog post that says, "Here's a new roadmap, and Season 2 is 6 months now." And as you might expect, people are a little upset that they are once again expanding Season 2 by 6 months. So I'll give everyone a quick breakdown of what the new roadmap looks like, and then we can dive into our thoughts on this. So again, Season 2 is still adding 2 new maps and 3 new modes. Campaign co-op is still coming, and there will be a beta for Forge. And campaign co-op now is coming. They're expecting late August, and the beta for Forge, they're expecting September. And then they're also adding the ability to basically New Game Plus, replay the campaign. That is coming in August as well. But Season 3 of Halo Infinite is now starting, I believe, November 8th. So now we are waiting until November for Season 3. So Sam, how did this news hit you? I for one, was looking forward to the conversation shifting regarding Halo Infinite, but I don't think that's the case for the next 6 months.
No, unfortunately, Miles, I think you and I are very much in a similar position there, where I was actually very excited for Season 2. I recently started playing Halo Infinite again. I had put it down because of Elden Ring and all the other big games, Horizon Forbidden West, but I was starting to play it again. I was getting into some more matches, trying to work on my battle pass, and I'm excited for Season 2. The 2 new maps they've shown legitimately look great. I want to give them some praise there. Like, what they've shown, they look like they could be 2 of the best maps in the game. The new modes look really cool. So, and obviously more modes, even on existing maps, means more variety in general. It's not just, oh, like +5 things. It's more than that when you actually think about the combination. So I want to give them credit there. At the same time, okay, here's the problem, Miles. It's season 3 being in November. I think co-op being bumped a couple more weeks is not that big of a deal at the end of the day. Like, we went around the whole co-op conversation. We're not doing that again about how the game launched and all that.
Let me scream about co-op,
not
all right?
doing it again. But at this point, if at this point, if they needed 2 or 3 more weeks to get co-op right, fine. Whatever. Get it right. Make sure it works. Okay. And Forge in September being an open beta. Like, you know what? That's okay. If as long as it works, as long as there aren't any like serious problems with it, yeah. Launch Forge in a beta mode. Get community feedback.
Yeah.
They did mention in the blog post as well that it's evidently been in private testing for a while now. So it seems like some people like under NDA have had access to it for a while. Now it's just going to be open for everyone, presumably. That's cool. That's really cool. That gets people making their own maps, making their own stuff. Great. I just don't understand how season 2 is supposed to last 6 months. That's the issue. It's the one real issue I have with this whole thing, but it's a big issue, unfortunately. That's the one thing that is like everyone's feedback was, hey, y'all, we understand, but season 1 was too long. We get it. Priority 0, you want to make sure the team isn't crunching. You want to make sure the team is healthy. Okay, we respect that. Fine, do it this time. But now we're doing it again. I'm not a game developer, and I'm not going to pretend to ever be a game developer. And I understand that there are certain worldwide challenges right now.
Yes.
Perhaps more on that at a later date. But at the same time, at the end of the day, it doesn't change the fact that this season is now 3 months longer than it was before. And there is a bit of weariness to that. Like, I'm going to have fun with the game. I'm going to play it. I'm going to be playing it religiously when Season 2 comes out. But I'm going to finish that 100-tier battle pass, can't even talk, well before Season 3 comes out. And so when that happens, like, okay, I'll put it down again. And I think as well, Miles, I'll say this. I think it's frustrating for us because I think you and I and other fans of Halo, we recognize how good the core of this game is.
Yes.
We recognize, you wrote about it extensively in your review. We understand how good this game feels, and we just want there to be more of it. We want this game to be duking it out with the other Titans at the top of the playing field. And it's just going very, very slowly. Again, I'm not a game developer. I'm not going to pretend I understand what the answer to that is. Maybe they need to hire more people. 343, if you need to hire more people, Microsoft should be giving you the ability to do that. Like, you should hire 100, 200, if that's what you need. If you need more resources in a certain area, okay, then divert certain things off to support teams like Certain Affinity, and who knows what they're working on. Like, let them handle other stuff so you can reorganize. Like, I don't know what the answer is, but I do absolutely respect wanting to not crunch. I think that's an admirable policy. I do think there has to be changes in the future to speed things up, whatever those changes are. I'm not going to preach about what they should be, but it's clear that something will have to change.
Yeah, and for me, I've always said that the devs should take whatever time they need, and even before the game launched, when we started hearing that features were not going to be there, my stance has always been that if they need more time, they need more time. That's just the reality of the situation. Because again, we have been very vocally anti-crunch, and that's not ever what I want to change. I don't want them to be like, well, guess what? Everyone has to work super hard because people are complaining on Twitter about this. That shouldn't be the conversation. Like you said, if Halo Infinite has a 10-year plan, why aren't they more comfortable hiring people internally? That's what I don't understand. Again, I understand contract work is important and that allows you to be more flexible. But at the same time, if Halo Infinite truly has a 10-year plan in place, why aren't you more comfortable hiring people permanently to say, this is my role here. I am dedicated to the future of Halo Infinite. I'm here to ensure that there's a steady flow of content. Because like you touched on, the game is so good. Halo Infinite is an incredible game. One of the best shooters in a very long time. One of even with the truncated campaign that we saw, I loved everything that was there. Absolutely loved the foundation. All of the maps that were in the game, I thought were well designed, polished. Gameplay was tight. Gunplay was amazing. It was everything you wanted a new Halo to be in terms of the gameplay, in terms of the core experience. But since then, there's just been so much negativity. And again, you can say everyone needs to stop being negative, but the reality is there is a lot of really fair, legit criticism about the launch of this game and the future of this game. We're going to be in a situation where in 1 year, we have 2 new maps and 3 new modes, basically. In 1 year, if we're counting the season 1 being 6 months and season 2 being 6 months, that is a rough start for a free-to-play games as a service title from anyone. I don't care. And we're talking about Microsoft, who is one of the biggest publishers in the world. And so for them to kind of fumble one of their biggest IP in this way, it's just a little annoying, I think, for a lot of fans, and that's really what it is, because a lot of us want to play Halo, have content to look forward to, get people excited about Halo, have all of our friends just organically and naturally be excited about Halo. But that's not the conversation surrounding Halo right now, and it's frustrating, it's exhausting. I get it, so I understand when people are like, "I'm tired of hearing about it." And I am tired of talking about it. If I'm being quite frank, I wanted season 2 to be the kickoff for the optimistic future of Halo Infinite, and we're not quite there. And now we're in a situation where we'll have to see, okay, what does season 3 look like? Maybe season 3 will be when all the pieces start coming together, and for some Halo fans, that's going to be frustrating. I'm still playing Halo. I will still be playing season 2. I, like you, will probably blast through that season 2 battle pass, and then I will probably move on from there. But yeah, it's just a little disappointing. And I don't know. I really don't know anymore, Sam. Also, Sam, your cam is a little glitchy for me. Do you want to reset that on Discord real quick? You look like a wall.
Sure.
Wall of pixels for me. Want to make sure everyone can see
Hold
that
on
beautiful,
you want me to
beautiful
drop it
thing.
and come back?
If you just turn your camera off and on, I think that'll probably be good enough.
Okay. All right. Give it a moment. All right.
Boom! Looking good,
Any
looking
better?
for it. Yeah, it was just, I don't know, like stuck, and it was just this splash of pixels. So there we go. Now we can see you looking good. So Sam.
Okay. Discord gonna Discord.
Exactly. Discord's gonna Discord. As we're looking into the future and the timeline for Halo Infinite, what are the biggest priorities for you as a player? Because we know what the next 6 months look like, and we know that they're trying to get Forge out quicker, so that Forge, I think, will alleviate a lot of the map concerns, because a lot of the community will be able to go in and fill those gaps for themselves, quite frankly. But when you're looking at season 3 and beyond, what are the priorities for you? What needs to change to keep you engaged with Halo Infinite?
So to keep me engaged, and by engaged, like, we all have busy lives. We play a lot of stuff. Obviously, you and I being on the media side, like, we're going to have work get in the way of things as well. So attaching an asterisk mark about, availability to what I'm about to say, for me to be engaged regularly, I think seasons have to be more common. Like, they just have to be more frequent. I'm not saying they can't do, like, I'm not saying it has 3 months, but, like, let's do a 4-month season. Can we do like an compromise between the two? I think 4 months is a lot more reasonable than 6 months, at least, when it comes to, like, getting new maps, new modes. You're right that Forge is going to alleviate some of the map concerns. I want to see what Forge can do. Like, how regularly is Forge going to get new features? Like, what is it that makes this Forge different from other Forges we've had in the past? Obviously it grew over time. It was very popular in Halo 3. Reach added Forge World, which was just this ridiculous place where you could crash the game. You could get it down to a nothing frame rate, just piling objects up. Halo 5 took it a little further, letting you meld objects and, like, essentially make your own maps. Like, not even just redecorating a map. Just, no, you're flat out making something completely new. What is it about this Forge that's going to separate it? What is it that makes it special? I don't have the answer, but I think they, at some point, maybe not even necessarily at launch, but at some point should have the answer. So, more frequent seasons, for one. Doesn't have to be 3 months, but it has to be more frequent than 6 months. and then I want to see big stuff in Forge. I think those are the two for me on the multiplayer side. Obviously, on the single player side, because I am a big campaign guy, I want to see the next campaign expansion for Halo Infinite. I want to see exactly how that works, because they've said for a while that it's going to be an ongoing game, but I don't think we really understand exactly how that's going to work. So even just
Mhm.
some clarity around how that works, I think that'd be appreciated.
Yeah, I think when we're looking at Forge, they really should be pulling inspirations from Roblox, as much as people don't want to hear that, and Fortnite when it comes to the way the community can engage with the creation tools in those games, and they can basically make
Right.
games within the creation tools of these games. And you see some really impressive, innovative stuff, and that keeps the community really engaged. When you go to Fortnite now, there is a huge library of custom game modes, and you can browse that, you can play that with friends, and if Forge can lean into that, so it's we've seen it in the past with like the infected modes and some of the silly side games that they've done. But if they can really lean into that and give players a creation tool that allows them to make, let's say somebody's tired of waiting for the Halo Battle Royale, give a Forge tool set that allows them to make a Battle Royale within your game. Stuff like that, I think, would be really impressive. And that's the foundation that I hope Forge lays out. Because that, to me, once you get that locked down, once you have a tool set that is that capable, it just opens the floodgates for just infinite content. Pun
Mhm.
intended.
Yeah.
Bad, but I won't take it back ever. And again, this is not confirmed at all, but I have heard that is the goal with the new Forge. The goal here is to have the most in-depth creation engine that we have ever
Mhm.
seen, and the most tools at players' disposals to really be able to create game modes that are completely different than anything that is in the Halo suite. And if they nail that and it comes out and it's that, then let's go. Then the back quarter of this year will have some really exciting stuff to look forward to. When we get to
Right.
season 3, for me, Forge better be out. Forge better be out. If we're getting the beta in September, Forge better have some sort of official release date or release window in the back
Mhm.
2 months of this year. It really needs to be it. And season 3, please, please don't make it 6 months. I just, everyone was so vocally objecting the first time around. When they announced that season 1 last minute was going to be extended to 6 months, everyone was upset. Everyone was like, okay.
Right.
Again, like you touched on, we
Mhm.
get it. You're figuring the systems out. You're trying to get the games in line, but do it again for season 2, that is a bigger problem. And if they do it again for season 3, oh, we will never hear the end of it. We will just, it'll be this constant just blister on Halo Infinite. And again, we talked about how, at launch, when people had their concerns about content and no co-op and blah, 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 a lot of us were saying, after a year, everything will be there and we won't have to have these conversations and everyone will forget about it. And it's
Mhm.
looking like that's not going to be the case. We're still going to be having these conversations in a year about what Halo Infinite is, quote unquote, lacking. And I really want the community and this game to be beyond that. And, that's kind of my expectation for season 3. I had high expectations for season 2, if I'm being honest, and those expectations are not being met in a lot of ways. So have to wait. Have to wait and see, Sam. Let's get to some super chats here. We got Jonas the Dad, who says, "Love the sat chat. Keep the salt on the side." Nice. Then we get Hargeet Chani, who says, "As I said on Game On Daily, 343 should be looking at bringing classic maps from Halo 1 through 3, Reach, etc. into Infinite. They're awesome maps and lots of them." Yeah, I mean, I think the problem there is they still need to recreate those maps in their new engine. I think that's why it's not as simple
Right.
as just bringing them over. That would be cool, and I hope they do that because there are some
Mhm.
amazing, iconic maps that people would. Blood Gulch,
Sure.
you, that's just the staple. I mean, if you put in Blood Gulch or a Valhalla equivalent, nobody's going to complain. Everybody's going to be excited. But with their new engine, they still have to completely and fundamentally recreate those maps. And it sounds like, yeah, that's just kind of that's obviously an area that they're struggling to hit that cadence on right now. So hopefully it comes, and maybe it will come, but
Mhm.
not soon. Not soon. All right, let's transition into something a little more positive, at least for me. and that is the Halo TV series. You have been handling all of
Right.
our official reviews for Windows Central on the
Mhm.
Halo series. So you've been in there, you've been critically analyzing
Yep.
each and every episode. So what I want to know is
Yep.
where after episode 5, and we'll try to avoid spoilers,
Right.
but again, if you are really
Sure.
averse to hearing any spoilers whatsoever, either to wait a few minutes or skip a few minutes. I will be careful, but
Right.
just as a heads up there. How are you feeling about
Right. Right.
the culmination of where we're at right now with the Halo series?
Sure, sure. So with episode 5, there's 9 episodes this season, so we're over the hump. We are over halfway through. Miles, I will be honest, somewhat surprisingly, I'm liking it. I really like the Halo show. I want to be clear, I don't think it's perfect. I think there's a couple of odd choices. I think there's a couple of plots that I'm a little concerned aren't really going anywhere. And I even wrote, I'm like, is this just to fill out the space in the runtime? Is like, what are we doing here? But by and large, I like it. Obviously, I'm trying to avoid spoilers, but just the nature of a TV series, it's hard not to say anything at all. So I'll try
Exactly.
and keep this a little vague. I like the idea of this being an alternate timeline that examines more of, hey, who are the Spartans really as human beings? Are they even still really human beings like you or I understand the word human? I think that's interesting. I think the idea of finding out, hey, let's poke and prod around in here and find out what makes Master Chief tick. I kind of like that. It's different. It's, you know, Chief, frankly, doesn't have that much personality in the original trilogy. I'm sorry, he's iconic and I love him, he's awesome, but I've been on record saying I think Halo Infinite and even Halo 4 better gave us an idea of who Chief is as a character than the original trilogy did. And this series is kind of in line with that. It's poking at the idea of him coming to terms with who he is, some big internal reveals. If you've read the books, you understand that Oni and Dr. Halsey can get up to some shady stuff, shall we say. They've not always been on the up and up, and always been beacons of purity. I think it's interesting to examine that. And more than anything, I think they've nailed the action. There's only been 2 big action scenes so far, one in the first episode and then one in the 5th episode. But those 2, to me, have been awesome. It's just all out warfare. You see like Marines getting butchered by jackals with like miniature energy swords. A dude gets hit with needles from a needler and he just turns into mist. Like, yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
I think it's perfect. Again, I think there are some things that aren't great. Show does have a weird fascination with butts. That is a legit thing. Like, okay, you are gonna get some butt if you watch this show. Just fair warning. That's something. I think the whole Madrigal side plot with the insurrectionist started interesting, but like now, it's kind of going downhill. I'm not really feeling it. If I had to grade the first 5 episodes overall, I would say somewhere between like a 7 or an 8 out of 10. Somewhere in there so far is how I'm feeling. Like, it's not perfect. It's pretty good.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. I think episode 5, the most recent episode, that was my favorite episode by far. Not only
Oh
did
yeah.
it have the iconic, like the best action sequence, because I was big on the first action sequence. I know people complained about some of the CG and some of the effects, and I think they're a little wonky. I was very vocal about the first person action sequences in episode 1. Thought that was
Yeah.
really corny, really corny. So I'm glad that has been dialed way back. But episode 5, great culmination of these story arcs that they've been building on for the Spartans, at least. Like you touched on, the Madrigal plotline started interesting, thought it was interesting in episode 1 and 2, and since then I've kind of been like, where is this going? Is, like you said, is this going anywhere? But I really like the way that they've, presented Chief. I know that's the most polarizing thing. And
Sure.
that will be the most polarizing thing if you are familiar with the games, because Chief in the show is a lot different than Chief in the games. People are upset that he's taking his helmet off a lot. People are upset that he's like yelling and being more, I guess, quote unquote, emotional. But I really like how they're touching on the dynamic of the Spartans and how Master Chief in the series isn't even really introduced as a good guy. He's not introduced as the hero. He's introduced as like a villain almost. And so we're it starts from there, and then they're breaking down the barriers of that and like making him more human. And I think that's really interesting because I'm on the same page. I love Halo. I love the Halo games, but Master Chief, to me, he's been a badass. No doubt about that. He's out there kicking ass. But his development, his delivery, his dialogue for most of the games, it's not great. Like it's not great. I'm just gonna say it. I'm just gonna say it very loud and proud. Master Chief has not always been the most interesting person to listen to in the games. And that's why Halo Infinite, to me, that's one of the main reasons I really like the campaign, is he was able to feed off the human elements of these other characters and deliver a performance that felt true to the character, but also was a little more kind of nuanced. And it wasn't just the Bruce Willis one-liner badass just there to get the job done no matter what it takes. They leaned into that and made that a part of his character in the games. But in the show, he's way more emotional. He's way more human, if you will. And I think that is an interesting dynamic to touch on, like the Spartan program and how they've been, dissecting that each episode and having these big reveals. Again, trying to be very careful not to spoil it for people who haven't seen it, but they are doing really interesting things, I think, with Master Chief, Kai, and the Spartan program specifically. But yeah, I gotta say, I'm digging it. I will say episodes 3 and 4, I was a little worried. I started off really strong. Episode 1, really, really big on. Episode 2, I liked. Episode 3, I was like, uh-oh, what are they doing here? Where is this going? They're really diverging from anything. Again, hasn't been a lot of action. Episode 4, I was indifferent on, thought it was fine. And then episode 5 hit, and I was like, okay. They have a plan here. They have a vision for where this is going, and I can see them executing on it now. And that action scene, dude, oh my God.
I've rewatched it. I've rewatched it like 3 times just to catch every little detail going on. There's a lot. There is a lot going on. It's they did a great job on that.
Yeah, and I see Gabriel in the chat here is touching on the Master Chief and Cortana relationship has been on point. I love their dynamic. I love their bickering. Master Chief just being like, please just leave me alone. Get out of my head. And Cortana taking little jabs at him and his character. Like, that feels really great. I love that dynamic. But again, for me, as much as I do enjoy the lore of Halo, I've always been more about the action sequences, the big epic moments of that, and to see them deliver on those with like seeing the grunts, seeing the jackals, seeing the brutes, seeing all of the Covenant ships, like seeing those brought to life. I know people have been kind of down on the CG, but maybe I'm just crazy, but I think it looks incredible. Like I really,
for a TV show, I think it's good.
Yeah.
I think for a TV show, this is big budget. This is about what could be expected. I think it's fine.
And I will say the biggest piece of glowing praise I can give this is my wife, who doesn't care about Halo at all. Like when I said, hey, let's watch the Halo series, she's like, ugh, I don't want to watch the Halo series. I don't care about Halo. I'm like, come on, give it a try. And so I asked her last night at dinner, I'm like, okay, now that you're 5 episodes in, how are you feeling about this series? Like, do you care at all? And she's like, like sci-fi is not my biggest thing, and that's kind of my biggest complaint about it. But at this point, I'm connected to the characters. And I'm like, okay, well, they are able to connect people who aren't familiar or don't even like Halo with these characters. And I think that is, when you're making a show, that is the biggest goal. And I think they've done a really good job with most of them. I don't know where they're going with that dynamic. And like, I was a little disappointed with how that's been handled. But outside of that, I like most of the character dynamics. All right, Sam, you ready to get into some meat? You ready to get into some juice?
Let's do it.
Some spice, if you will. All right.
Let's do it.
One of the bigger conversations this week, and really the past few months, has been momentum when it comes to Xbox console sales. We've seen sites like VG Charts report that Xbox has been outpacing the PS5 the last couple of months. And then there was another interesting kind of report that came out that basically said that if we're looking at a direct comparison to Xbox 360, that even the Xbox Series X and S is outpacing the Xbox 360. And that is interesting. Those figures and that trend is interesting to see. And then we had people like Aaron Greenberg kind of retweet some figures from VG Charts about the Series X and S performing well. And that opened up a whole can of worms. A whole can of worms, and we've seen a lot of people sharing their passionate takes on, console sales. Do they matter? Should we be using VG Charts? We had Jeff Grubb come out. Jeff Grubb, love Jeff. He came out and said, I know VG Charts isn't perfect, but I feel like they've made improvements. And I feel like these figures are interesting to look at. We don't source them in our stuff, but I don't feel like they're wildly off. And I will say that's kind of where I'm at. Obviously, on Windows Central, we are not sourcing VG charts because they've historically not been 100% accurate. They are trying to find the information and trying to present it in a way that's somewhat accurate without actually having verified information. So we don't use it to report on. I think it is interesting. I think it's interesting to look at the metrics, and especially when we look at the comparisons to Series X and Xbox 360 in particular. That one, we can obviously see that there are increases. Even though we don't have official data, there are obviously increases we can point to. And Xbox 360, when that came out, that was ahead of the PS3 by a year. So that had an entire year basically on the PS3. So it had a ton of momentum because of that. And now we are in a period where gaming in general is a lot bigger. Xbox, PlayStation, and Nintendo are all doing exceptionally well. They all have big products out at the same time. And Xbox, according to these figures, is still performing incredibly well. And obviously that's exciting. Where things get complicated and where things get a little dramatic is Xbox is no longer sharing console data. Xbox has vocally come out and said, we will not be sharing that because that's not part of our plan for the future. And then this whole Aaron Greenberg thing is counter to what Xbox's messaging is. And now it's got people saying like, okay, well, do console sales matter? Is that a big factor here? So we're going to have some conversations, and keep in mind, everyone in the chat, like there's going to be some passionate takes here. But we're trying to be constructive about this. We're trying to approach this in a way that's not combative. So keep that in mind as we're discussing this. This isn't attacking anyone. So Sam, what are your thoughts on VG charts?
Okay.
Let's just start there, and we'll go from there.
We're going to start with the lowest point. We're going to start with this is the most competitive I'll get. If VG charts is trying to improve, I respect that. I still don't particularly care for them. I don't. I have not cared for a very long time as someone who does cover like financial data on Windows Central, and even before that, when I was blogging, as someone who has covered, console sales, game sales, I respect hard data. And I understand it is hard to get that data.
Yes,
but
people want it.
Why the video game industry is secretive to a ludicrous degree on so many different things. Benji Sales, great guy, has said that game developers will come to him and say, "Hey, dude, it was because of your reporting. It was because of what you said that I actually found out how much my game sold." That's a little whack to me. Okay?
That's a little whack.
Like, I don't know. Call me crazy. I think if you worked on a game for 3, 4, 5, 6 years, you should just know what it sold. I don't know. That's me. I'm not a student.
Put it up. Have a bulletin board in the office or something so people can look at it.
A counter, like a metric. The counter just keeps on going up. Whatever. But to me, because of how secretive the industry is, that's why accurate data matters. Because you get a butterfly effect if false data is introduced. You get these small ripples. Well, then they become bigger ripples and bigger, and things get distorted way out of whack. So I respect what they're trying to do if they are legitimately trying to improve, but there was a time when VG charts just flat out pulled numbers out of thin air. They would report games sold for a game that got canceled or a game that got delayed. And it's like, y'all, what are you doing here? Where are you getting 200,000 copies sold from? The game is not on store shelves. It's impossible. So I think I just have a low opinion. I have a very low opinion. If they want to improve, then that is going to take a very long time.
And that's where a lot of people are. And that's why we saw people like Daniel Ahmed come out on Jeff's post and be like, hey, let's be careful how we present this data, because this is not data. This is basically an estimate. This is kind of a guess based on certain metrics. And again, I think that's interesting to look at. And obviously we can pull some little nuggets of loose trends based on that. But like you said, for people in our position, we have to be careful about how we present that data. Right. Because it's, like I said, it's not factual data. It's just a guess at the end of the day based on certain factors. So I understand why people are very vocally averse to trusting VG charts, because like you touched on, their history of blatantly inaccurate data. It still exists. There are currently figures on their website that people have pointed out as being inaccurate, despite the fact that companies like PlayStation have official data out that gives you that figure
Right.
specifically. So
Right.
nobody's perfect, and I'm not expecting anybody to be perfect. And I'm not saying anyone who works for VG Charts is a terrible person,
No.
blah blah blah.
No.
Like they're trying to do their best with what they have, and I don't think that's inherently evil or nefarious. But then we get into the situation, much like Metacritic. I don't think Metacritic is nefarious or evil in its design and its approach. It's just aggregating all this stuff together and throwing out a number into the universe. But the way that people take that number and the way that people are taking these
Right.
numbers and using them as definitive proof or, ammo for their platform being the best, I have a problem with that. And I've been vocal on Twitter. People probably saw my my tweet yesterday that people were a little upset by, but the reality is, I talked about this previously, is you don't get to pick and choose when that matters, I guess, is my biggest issue with this conversation. And again, people were digging up old tweets from Aaron Greenberg in the past, and I always think that's a little petty, but people are digging up old tweets where Aaron Greenberg is basically making fun of VG Charts, saying you can't use this data, blah, blah, blah. And then, of course, because Aaron Greenberg retweeted VG Charts, people are throwing that back in his face, and it's this whole ugly thing. But again, even Aaron Greenberg doesn't get to pick and choose when that data matters. And I'm not afraid to be critical of Xbox and the people at Xbox. And I think Aaron Greenberg doing that has, stoked this kind of console war back and forth, which is unfortunate. And again, I want to reiterate that I think VG Charts is interesting. It's fascinating to look at some of that and maybe pull some trends from a speculatory standpoint, but I really don't think it should be presented in any world as factual information unless we have the verified info. And like you touched on, this is complicated by the fact that Microsoft is not going to give people that info. People want it. Clearly, people want to be able to directly compare PlayStation to Xbox because it is interesting. Because the playing field this time around, regardless of where you lean in terms of your preference, it's way more level than it was last generation. All of these players, Nintendo, PlayStation, and Xbox, have proven that they are all in on gaming. Gaming is a huge portion of the future of all of these companies, and they are tangibly showing that, they are demonstrating that, and gaming as a whole is bigger than it's ever been, so people are interested in gaming, and they are willing to buy these consoles. They are willing to throw down money on $70 games. They are willing to subscribe to Xbox Game Pass, and that makes this conversation way more interesting. So I get that need, that desire for that data. So what I want to ask you, Sam, is do you think that now that Xbox has beneficial data when it comes to console sales, do you think they're going to go back on their stance of not sharing that? That we have an investor call coming up on April 26th. Do you think we're going to see some console figures there?
Okay, I'll divide this into two parts: what I think and what I hope. All right, what I think, no, I don't think we will. I think Phil Spencer. There is a quote. I don't remember the outlet. I want to say it was Eurogamer, but I don't remember that 100%, so I will try to go find it. But Phil Spencer, before this generation began, went on record and said, hey, even if we outsell PlayStation, we are not going to share numbers. That's a big statement. That's a really big statement. It's not a statement I agree with personally, but that is a big statement. I'm not sure you can go back on that. I'm really not sure, unless it's accompanied by a very long-winded conversation about, hey, we realize we should be more transparent, and obviously it's still only happening because the numbers are beneficial this time around, but that's a thing. What I want to see, yes, I want to see, but I wanted to see how many Xbox Ones were sold, just like I want to see how many Game Pass subscribers there are, just like I like seeing how many PlayStations are sold, Nintendo Switches are sold, how many PlayStation Plus subscribers there are. I think that data is valuable. Do fanboys take it and run with it? Yes, of course they do, and they're idiots for doing so. But fanboys take anything and run with anything, and if they aren't getting something, they'll invent something. On so much misinformation on Twitter these days, like it's just straight up invented. Like they're not even twisting something on either side; they're just making something up to twist it. I do hope that Microsoft shares that data personally, because I think it's valuable and I think it's important to understand, especially for markets that, and maybe the UK, where we know Xbox has historically done very well. They still did well during the Xbox One generation. You know, if they're doing well outside of that, that's interesting. You know, in more developing nations, in other countries, in Japan, in Korea, like I think that's important to look at and not be a fanboy over, but just take the data. You know, take it for what it is.
Yes, the data is interesting, and we want it. I get it. I absolutely, especially you mentioned Japan. We know that Xbox One did not perform in Japan, and we've seen some kind of rough figures that give us estimates of where Xbox is at in Japan. So if they have a huge growth spurt in Japan this generation, it would be nice if they came out and presented that. And from a marketing perspective, I absolutely get it. If you are on the marketing team at Xbox and you know, because chance they have to know what they're selling. I don't imagine it's just, oh, we just send out pallets and then we figure it out when random people on Twitter give us the data. They know.
Yeah.
They know what they're selling. They know what they've shipped. And again, if you're from the marketing perspective, I'm sure you want to bang that drum. You want to shout that number from the rooftops, especially when it is historically, above your competition. I've talked about this in the past. PlayStation early on this generation set the precedent that console sales are the main factor of their business model. Console sales are their main metric for success, and they have said that, and they have come out, and that's why they've done all these practices. And now we're seeing that shift a little bit, and we've seen the messaging drastically shift since the pre-launch of PlayStation 5 in a lot of ways. But Xbox going into this gen, they were saying that console sales aren't the most important metric for them. Console sales, they were looking at engagement, they were looking at growth. Obviously, xCloud, they're trying to, Phil Spencer's message of getting games out to the billions of people out in the world, like that was sort of their messaging there. So again, it would be really messy if they were just like, okay, well, now it matters to us. We had this big, emboldened, impassioned statement where we said, we're not going to share this data because that is not the main driver for our success. And then for them to come out and say, we're doing really well in console sales. It would be messy. It would be ugly. It would be inconsistent. And again, Microsoft gets a lot of flack for their inconsistencies. And this would be a huge public example where people could point back to specific interviews, public PR statements from people like Phil Spencer and be like, all right, what happened here? Why did it change? Did it only change because you're doing well now? Or do console sales not really matter as much still, but this is just a little feather in your cap? Is this? And that's kind of what it comes down to. So again, I'm in the same camp. I would love that data just to be out. I would love for Xbox and PlayStation and all these companies to just officially reveal their milestones. So we have that and we can say, okay, they're here. This is where they were at this date. They were here. We have that definitively. And the fact that we don't, like you said, people were going to fill in those gaps. People are going to scavenge and scour and find that data and present it in the ways that they want. So I agree. It gets ugly when it's only used in the efforts to continue the console war mentality. But it is interesting regardless. And I don't think VG charts is evil. And I don't think, using VG charts is evil. And I don't think it's unfair to celebrate the success of Xbox. And that's kind of what I want to transition this conversation into is why do you think Xbox is seeing this huge momentum and seeing all of this positive growth going into this gen? And I'm sure you feel it. If you've been online, you see people who didn't care about Xbox at all, like didn't own an Xbox. They are sharing screenshots of them playing games like Forza Horizon 5. They're talking about Game Pass. I have friends I haven't talked to in years DMing me because they know I'm the Xbox guy, and they're like, hey dude, I'm getting a Series X. Where can I find a Series X? What game should I pick up? And so I'm having all of these people who didn't have an Xbox last gen saying, I want an Xbox now. So why do you think that's happening?
I think there's a few different factors. I think there's a lot of different factors, but I'll try and hit the big ones really quick. So I think one thing is definitely supply shortages sort of evening the playing field, because we've seen it time and time again. Daniel Ahmad has said it. Benji Sales has said it. Like, everyone in the know on sales has said, these consoles are limited by how many they can make. If a PS5 is made, it's going to sell. If a Series X is made, it's going to sell. Like, that is the limiting factor. So I think the chip shortage, perhaps if we've heard some second party reports sort of that they were able to do well in bidding for chips this year, that they were able to
Uh-huh.
produce more consoles, especially now that they aren't having to put chips in the xCloud server racks because they were doing that back in 2021. So I think more consoles being available to sell, that's definitely a factor. I'm not saying it like, oh, someone who can't get a PS5, they're just definitely going to go get a Series X, but I do think like families, yeah, there's something to consider there. If they can only get one console and there is actually one available to buy, maybe they'll buy it. It's not the only statistic, but it is something. I think, and there's no way for this not to sound a little snarky, so I apologize in advance for that. I'm trying to water this down. I think actually having games helps as well as it. I don't think it's a Look, I love the Ori games. I love the Ori games with all my heart, all my soul. The Coalition and Playground Games did an amazing job in the last generation. But I don't think it's unfair to say the Xbox One was the weakest first party generation of Xbox ever. I don't. I don't think
Yeah.
that's a controversial statement, even though there are games that I loved and there are games that I played. So that is a factor as well. The fact that people see like, oh, you have something like Psychonauts 2 and that's in Game Pass. Okay, I'll play it. You have Forza Horizon 5 and Halo Infinite and all that. Like, okay, we'll play that. And we're looking on the roadmap. You've got this RPG called Avowed, and that's from Obsidian. All right, that seems interesting.
Yeah.
And then you've got all of Bethesda and Starfield, and people don't understand how big that's going to be because a Bethesda RPG is a very big deal. And then all the other creators, like what is id going to do next? This thing has a ripple effect. This is anecdotal as all heck, but I know someone who was like talking with their friends, and their friends were like, so wait a minute, I'm hearing that like the next Elder Scrolls is only going to be on Xbox, and their friends aren't plugged in at all, so they had to explain like, yeah, they own the company now. That's the way it's going to be. That stuff has a ripple effect that spreads out. Activision Blizzard is pending. Obviously, they said it's going to take a while for that deal to go through. That deal is probably going to go through sometime early next year, it seems like. But when that goes through, how does that affect things as well? Like all these things stack up and add up. And I mentioned Game Pass. That's obviously a factor as well. Game
Oh yeah.
Pass it's not at Netflix ubiquity yet, but it is definitely continuing to grow. It is on the up and up. And Netflix, just like Netflix, rather, Game Pass can save people money. Game Pass can save families money. I'm going to be very curious to see how it grows when Jez Corden's reported Family Plan launches later this year. If that still pans out, like that'll be interesting to see. It's not. This is a very long-winded way of me saying, Miles. It's not one thing. It's a lot of different things that are all coming together at the same time, and all of that is because they've put more resources in, because they've actually invested in Xbox as a brand.
Excellent point, Sam. You are 100% correct that the most exciting thing about Xbox right now and where they're at and where they're going is how all of these pieces and how all of these promises that they've been laying the foundation for years. Let's be real, like a lot of this stuff started 2017-ish when
Oh yeah.
the future of Xbox really didn't look that optimistic. As you touched on, the Xbox One generation in terms of first party output was their weakest. It was as an Xbox fan, it kind of was a bummer when people told me that they didn't need an Xbox, and I had to be like, yeah, I guess I get it. Like, I'm not going to fault you for saying that, because the reality is, if you don't love Gear, I love Gears. So,
Oh yeah.
and I know a lot of people don't, but I love Gears, so that was a big selling point for me. But for a lot of people, they could say they didn't need an Xbox and kind of mean it. But now, when you look at Game Pass, when you look at the slate of first-party titles, when you look at the exclusives they're locking down, for me, if you're someone who really does genuinely love gaming, and I understand that gaming is inexpensive and you can't necessarily buy all the consoles, but I have a hard time believing anyone who genuinely says they don't care about Xbox right now. They don't care about what Xbox is doing. They don't care about all of the games that are coming from Xbox. I really, truly, sincerely don't believe someone who says that. If you like,
I agree, Miles. I got to interrupt, but like I 100% agree. Like during the Xbox One generation, yeah, no, I unfortunately I can totally believe you. That's fair. If you, honest to God, look at all the games they have coming and all the potential, and you can't find something that's interesting, I do legitimately question if you're interested in gaming at all. Like I question it.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
not to be combative, but really, truly, and genuinely, and I've said this before, I've never been more excited about the future and the possibility of Xbox, because they have proven that Microsoft and all of its infinite piles of money is willing to spend that money to make games and to give you a platform that's exciting. So Game Pass is huge. The fact that they have the quote unquote most powerful console and the most affordable console, that was a really clever strategy to pull in anyone and everyone. The fact that the average family now can spend $300 and then $10 to $15 a month on Game Pass and be set, like that is a huge value proposition. Because the reality is there's a huge number of people who either have fallen out of gaming or aren't super invested in gaming because of how expensive it is. And when you tell someone, let's say you have a friend who is passively interested in gaming, kind of wants to dabble with playing games with you and your friends, you tell them, all right, dude, just go spend $500, buy a Series X, spend $60 to buy Halo, and then spend $60 to get a year of Xbox Gold. And this person's like, I got to pay over $700 to play Halo with the squad? I'm good. No, I'm out. But now you can say, hey, do you have a PC that's somewhat decent? Okay, cool. Get Game Pass. We can play Halo. Like stuff like that. That is pulling people into the Xbox ecosystem. And that ties back into their messaging that the console, well, I think it is an interesting and important factor of the business overall. I don't think that's their broad long-term approach is going all in on the console space. And as a console heathen, it's something I have to come to terms with. And it's something I have come to terms with, that there might be a world in the future where I don't have my dedicated box in the same way that I know it now. But I'm still excited about the convenience and that future of, anyone and everyone, no matter who they are, if they have a TV. Like, I'm excited about the world where if they have a TV and a controller, bam, they can play Xbox games. Like, that to me is exciting. And I think that really kind of speaks to Xbox putting all of the pieces in place for this very, very forward-thinking future. And a lot of us obsess about the past and the now, but really Xbox is looking way beyond that into how do we grow this? When Phil Spencer talks about the 2 billion gamers that they could potentially reach, I don't think he's just saying it just for buzz. I think they are really having these conversations about what does that look like? Because the console's not it. We know there is a cap. Even PlayStation 4, the runaway success, the just gargantuan. There is a hard cap to your success potential and a hard cap to the number of people who are willing to buy a console. So if you want to grow, you got to go out beyond that. That's where I'm at. All right, Sam, I got to give a quick shout out to all the amazing people joining us live. I see a lot of great conversations in the chat here. I respect and appreciate everyone who's able to have a different opinion and articulate it in a way that isn't ugly or nasty. Thank you very much. I know that is a conversation we've seen a lot of people very passionately engaging with on Twitter. And again, if you are celebrating Xbox, you have every right to. There is a lot to celebrate about the future of Xbox and the current success of Xbox. My only ask, and this is way too big of an ask, just please don't derive your joy and your excitement from the suffering and bitterness of someone else. I don't like it. I don't like to see it. I haven't liked to see it. I will never like to see it. And I've been very vocal about that. So that's my only ask when we are using this data, having these conversations is, just please show a shred of human empathy. That's it. That's all I need. Super chat from Georgie says, Miles, think we see Perfect Dark at E3 or Everwild? All right, Sam, what do you think? Are we seeing Perfect Dark at E3 this year? Or E3-ish, I should say. E3 window?
We'll call it not 3.
Yes. And are we seeing Perfect Dark and are we seeing Everwild?
I think, congratulations. I think you named the 2 games we definitely won't see.
Damn!
I'm sorry to bring the heel down and crush hopes. Like, I don't think those 2 games, like both of those games, Everwild in particular, it seems like need more time. That they've been, Everwild, it seems like, according to reports, was essentially rebooted in terms of, like, not scrapping what they had done, but figuring out what the game structure is. And that's fine. Like, take your time, Rare, get a new IP right. Perfect Dark, that's an important reboot. If they have to, we talked about that before on the show, Miles, if they have to shuffle things around and, let heads butt in order to figure out the initiative studio culture, building a new studio is not easy. So take your time, figure it out. I think maybe maybe there's a chance we could see Perfect Dark gameplay at like Jeff's Game Awards end of the year. I think there's a sliver of a chance for that. I think that's a possibility.
Yeah, again, there's been a lot of reports about Perfect Dark and Everwild, and none of them have been positive. So that's a little unfortunate to see. I'm in the same boat as you, and I've talked about this publicly, is I think it's cool that these teams are really getting a chance to go back to the drawing board with this, figure out what works, and they're not in the situation where this is the timeline. You got to put something out, so figure it out. I do also think that because of the negative reporting, that I hope we see something soon-ish. Like, I agree, we could see something Perfect Darky at the Game Awards.
Mhm.
Everwild, I know they went back to the drawing board reportedly to figure out what the gameplay loop is. But I hope, I'm not expecting it, but what I would want to see is give us an in-engine shot of the world. Even if there's no gameplay, even if there's no overall loop, if they're still figuring out what that is, give us a glimpse into what this world looks like in engine, and give people something to get excited about regarding Everwild. And again, I know showing gameplay is tough, but I think that would go a long way into, quelling this negativity. Because again, when we have no news officially, and the only news we're getting is from people reporting negative things about a project, a lot of people are just going to assume the worst about the project. So if you have something to show to get people excited, to kind of silence some of that, I think it's a good idea, even if it isn't like the big gameplay reveal. And we saw it with Starfield. Starfield gave us a glimpse of in-engine little bits and pieces. I feel like we could get something like that for Everwild. I don't think that's unreasonable to ask for, but do I expect it? Probably not, sadly. As much as I really want to see what that game is, because I think what Rare achieved with Sea of Thieves is so special, and I would love to see them kind of have lightning strike twice again with a really unique gameplay loop. I really don't know where they are in that project. I don't know how far along it is.
Right.
So yes, to answer your question, Georgie, probably not, sadly. But maybe we'll be pleasantly surprised. Next thing I want to rant a little bit about here. Evil Dead the game. Evil Dead the game. I finally got to play it. I finally got to sit down, check it out. When this game was first revealed, I was joking, because it was Game Awards or Summer Game Fest, and it was when we were all expecting Elden Ring. And I was, joking about how, the finale of the Game Awards is going to be Evil Dead and Elden Ring. The big grand finale of Summer Game Fest is going to be Evil Dead and Elden Ring. And Jeff Keighley, bless his heart, he did it. The Mad Lad absolutely did it. The final two things of Summer Game Fest were Evil Dead the game and Elden Ring. And that is the most hyped I've ever been that's maybe the most hyped I've ever been at a showcase, because of how perfectly catered that was to me and what I want and what excites me. But sadly, when I talk about Evil Dead online, I have a lot of people who say, "What's Evil Dead? I've never even heard of Evil Dead." I'm like, oh, damn, that one hurts. So I understand that there's a lot of people who are not familiar with this franchise in any capacity. And when they first revealed gameplay for Evil Dead the game, I specifically remember telling myself, this isn't going to be what the game looks like. This graphically, the animations, everything they're showing here, this looks way too good. Like, there's no way there's a licensed Evil Dead game coming out in 2022 that's going to look like this. There's no way. And I've actually got to play it. I've got to play the beta on Series X. I've got to play the beta on PC. I got to sit down with a bunch of people from Boss Team Games and Saber Interactive and really grill them on Evil Dead, because I'm a huge Evil Dead nerd. Big Evil Dead fan. And so, when I sat there, they're like, okay, let's tell you about the gameplay loop. And I was like, I've already played 3 hours of this. All right, let's skip past that. I know what the gameplay loop is. All right, let's dive into the meat of what did you do here? Are you fans? How big of fans are you? Give me the nitty-gritty details. And they're like, okay, this guy gets it. So some of the fun anecdotes they gave me is they worked directly with Bruce Campbell, who is Ash in the series, to really, get the feel of all of the characters right, get the feel of the universe right. They sent character models over to Bruce to basically get the sign off on, which I thought was amazing. And one of the notes they told me is that they sent over the Army of Darkness Ash to Bruce Campbell, and he's like, butt cheeks are too big, shrink the butt. Sorry guys, that's not going to fly. And stuff like that gets me really excited. I talked to their quote unquote lore master who had like a notebook just full of references and Easter eggs and all of these nods to the series. And it just, as an Evil Dead nerd, I was so excited to see that this game was made by huge Evil Dead nerds and they really get it. But more than that, what's exciting is that I want this to introduce people to Evil Dead, and I want people to play this game and then go back and watch the movies, because I know there's going to be a huge number of people who simply play this because it is a horror multiplayer game. And that being said, like, it is the best feeling asymmetrical horror multiplayer title I've played. Compared to Friday the 13th, compared to Dead by Daylight, which I do enjoy, but they have their jank, they have their stiffness. Dead by Daylight in particular, the gameplay loop, it's just kind of boring. Like the fixing the generators, just pressing left bumper, the quick time events. Like, I'm really disappointed that Dead by Daylight hasn't evolved the formula in all these years. But this has great action. Like, you feel empowered. The moment-to-moment gameplay feels really good. So not only are you trying to solve these puzzles and like complete the objectives, it just feels good. Every single second of playing the game feels good, which I can't say about Friday the 13th and Dead by Daylight. Sam, do you care about Evil Dead at all? I know
I like Evil Dead.
Okay.
I like it. It's not an obsession of mine like it is for you, and I mean that in a positive way. I love how hyped you are. I love how enthusiastic you are for it. But I've seen the movies. I've seen the third one more than once. Like, I enjoy it. I can get down with it. It's groovy. You know?
It's like, it's as the kids say. It's pretty groovy.
Right.
Pretty groovy, man. Because I know we've talked a little bit, and obviously I'm the only person on Windows Central I think that is hyped for this game. I think that's fair to say.
Yes. Yeah, that's fair to say. Yes. I'm interested. Like, okay. I want to see how it turns out. I want to see your review. I want to see the other reviews. Your preview did raise my excitement meter a little bit, because I'll be honest, I was very firmly on the, oh, there's no way this licensed game is any good. Like, oh, this is Friday the 13th all over again. I was very firmly on that. Now I'm a little more interested. Asymmetrical, still very hard to get right. That's very, very hard to get right. We've seen so many games attempt it, so many games fail. So we'll have to see what this looks like, you know, what the legs look like, but you've raised my interest. You've piqued my interest, for sure.
So I will say, if you're not a fan of Evil Dead, you're not a fan of the property, really what I will say about this game is the gameplay loop is far deeper than I was expecting. Again, as much as I'm excited about Evil Dead, I'll be honest, I wasn't really. My expectations were high. I'll just be completely honest with everyone here. As much as I wanted this to be an amazing game, I quite frankly wasn't expecting it to be an amazing game. So again, haven't played the full product, haven't seen exactly what's here, but my impressions of it are way more glowing than I thought they were going to be. If you like MOBAs, this will be a really great asymmetrical horror multiplayer title for you. If you've never played a MOBA or feel they're overwhelming, that is going to be a learning curve, because this game is not like basic. It's not Dead by Daylight. You go, you fix all the generators, that's it. There's like loot boxes, kind of like Fortnite, Apex Legends, so different weapon rarities. There are upgrade items within the match, so like a MOBA, you get stat points within a match that you can upgrade. Okay. There are character classes. There are 4 different character classes. Each character has unique abilities and perks, and there's an entire skill tree system in this game, so there is a lot to it. It is deep. And I have my biggest concern for the casual audience is that I think some of those mechanics might be a little overwhelming. I think if you want to just go in super casually and play a round or two, you might feel a little overwhelmed. If you have a squad of people like I do who love MOBAs, play a ton of MOBAs, we're ready. We're already coordinating our squad. Like, all right, I'll be this class. I'll be original Ash. Ash from Evil Dead 1 is the healer. And then you have Army of Darkness Ash, who's like the warrior class. And so there's all of these mechanics and systems baked into this. And when I was talking to them, you know, my final question was, what do you want people to know? Obviously, I'm going to have my own thoughts on this, but when you're talking about this to the community, what do you want people to know about Evil Dead the game? And their biggest message was like, regardless of how much you know about Evil Dead, our goal here was to make a game that is fun and you can jump in and you can kill zombies with friends and have a good time. And we wanted something that was deep and rewarding and really catered to people who, you know, played a lot of stuff like Fortnite and played a lot of stuff like League of Legends and Smite. And they pulled all these inspirations from a bunch of different genres to make this asymmetrical multiplayer game that stands out as its own unique thing, but also respects and understands where other games has succeeded. And they weren't afraid to lean into that. So I thought that was a really interesting approach. And so I'm excited to see how it pans out, and more excited to see when folks like you can play it and folks like people in the chat can play it, because I want to know what they think. I have my thoughts. I'm excited about it for all the reasons I've mentioned, but I'm curious to see if this will have widespread appeal or what the audience will be for this. Because Dead by Daylight and Friday the 13th, they have a passionate community in a lot of ways, but it's still pretty niche. And I think this will kind of fall into that trap as well. But I'm wondering if the Fortnite and Battle Royale parallels will draw in the kids. I want some, some fresh blood to experience Ash and the gang.
Wholesome entertainment for kids, right? The Evil Dead. Come on.
Yeah, come on. Yeah. Family fun. For that Game Pass family, what they need to do is they need to launch the Game Pass family plan and Evil Dead the game in Xbox Game Pass Friday the 13th. Let's go. I'm still pushing for it. Evil Dead should be a Game Pass launch title. Because I don't think a lot of people who are curious are willing to shell out. I think it's $40 for the base edition.
Okay, so it's not a full 60 or 70.
Yeah, it's not a full 60 or 70. But I think if people play it, they'll have a good time. And you can play it right now if you're listening live on Xbox through the Insider app. They're doing a closed beta right now. So I got some rounds in last night. I'll be playing some more rounds today. So Sam, if you are morbidly curious and you want to get some rounds in after this, let me know. Let me know.
I'll think about it. I might want to hold off until the full thing is out. So, yeah. But we'll see. We'll see how it goes.
Again, shout out to all the amazing people here. Yodani, Modding Like a Boss, Binyabik, Snowbike Mike in the house. Hey. A lot of amazing people joining us on this fine Saturday. All right, Sam, now that I've had a chance to gush about Evil Dead the game, I wanted to give you a chance to gush about some news that dropped this week, courtesy of a Gearbox showcase hosted by Mr. Hollywood himself, Randy Pitchford, about the future of Gearbox and Borderlands specifically, and the announcement of Tales of the Borderlands 2. How long has it been since the first one?
Well, let's see. The first episode was November 2014. And the fifth episode, because remember, this is Telltale, so this was back when everything not named The Walking Dead took a very long time to come out. The Wolf Among Us suffered a similar fate. But I think the fifth episode was October 2015, so almost a year, like 11 months. 11-month cycle there for getting all the episodes out. It's been a minute.
So Sam...
Sorry, go ahead, Boss.
I was just going to say, I've never played Tales from the Borderland, but I know people like you and many others have sung its praises from the rooftops. A lot of people consider this to be one of the best, if not the best, Telltale experience. So sell me on it, Sam. Why do you love Tales from the Borderland, and are you excited about Tales from the Borderland 2?
This game is flippin' funny. Okay, Tales from the Borderlands is just, everyone complains about some of the writing, like in Borderlands 3, or in like, just how corny some of the jokes are, how it doesn't land. Imagine if that humor actually landed, and how funny that universe could be if the people writing it were like, no, actually, we got great jokes. We've got people like making fun of executives and how macho they are, to the point that it devolves into like a literal finger gun battle with quick time events, and how ridiculous that gets. And we're going to take these ludicrous characters and make you care for them, and you're going to get emotional over them. Tales from the Borderlands, like, if you can pick it up, if you ever grabbed it before, like through Games with Gold, I think it was on there, or PlayStation Plus, and you've just never played it, please do. It's a very special game because it's an insightful, interesting, funny look at the world of Borderlands. It's not just a bunch of the same like streamer jokes over and over and over and over in a row until it's like, oh god, I get it, we're sick of it, you're making fun of Twitch streamers, we understand. It's actually very well written. Now, I will, and honestly, that's another thing, is that it just didn't sell well. It was critically well received, but it didn't sell that well, unfortunately. It was one of many Telltale projects that just wasn't that successful. I do think it is probably Telltale's second best game. My favorite of theirs is The Wolf Among Us. So
yeah,
that's number one that one's good. You know what it's
Yeah,
about.
I know what's up.
You
Yeah.
on board for Wolf Among Us 2? Like,
Let's
come
go,
on.
baby. Let's
Yeah.
go.
But this is number 2 for me. This is number 2. Now, I will say I'm a little hesitant here, Miles. I am going to pump the brakes a little bit. The revived Telltale is not involved with this game.
Correct.
And
that's correct.
this is just Gearbox, and this is just 2K Games, who actually own the Borderlands license. I think if a lot of people know that. So this is a little, wait a minute, who's actually writing this game? Who's actually in charge of this game? That's a little, I gotta hold off a bit. I gotta wait and see. I have played some, I haven't finished it, but I have played some of Tiny Tina's Wonderlands, the fantasy D&D-esque spinoff of Borderlands. While it's not perfect, I do think the writing in that game is a step up from Borderlands. I do think it is generally a superior written game. There are a lot of different writers who contribute to that. If it's more in line with that, if it's that crew, okay, I'm interested. But I got to see who's behind this game. I got to see who's involved with the creation before I'm too carried away. I'm excited, but I'm not over the moon like I am for the Wolf Among Us 2. You know?
Is it going to be one of those situations like the Futurama reboot where they announce and everybody's like, yeah, and then like a few weeks later, like, oh yeah, and Bender is not the original voice. You're like, wait a second.
Right.
Excuse me?
Right, like what's going on here? You saw how fast that got fixed.
Yeah, there was no world where people were just going to be fine with that, especially with him coming out and saying like, yeah, they just didn't want to pay us enough, so I wasn't going to do it.
No. Let's see. Even if they're like, hey, we hired some of the original writers who used to work at the old, defunct Telltale, and we brought them into Gearbox so they can work on this. If it's something like that, cool. Awesome. I'm in. It seems like it's going to follow new characters. It doesn't seem like it's going to be the cast of Tales from the Borderlands. I think that's interesting because people really liked those characters and the way they were characterized in that game. Less so in Borderlands 3. But that's a whole other thing. So we'll see how it goes. We'll see how it goes. They are saying that this game comes out in 2022. So I have to imagine we get more information pretty darn soon. Probably through like Summer Game Mess. I would have to imagine because, 2022, like we're not quite at the halfway point, but we're a chunk of the way in, Miles. We're a good chunk of the way into 2022.
We're getting close to halfway through, and that is wild. That's absolutely wild to me. This year is just, it's just been flying by, and it's been absolutely stacked. And if we look into the future of it, it's absolutely stacked. And unless you're talking about Xbox first party, zing. But
hey! At least Xbox first party does have a confirmed date on the game.
Well, that's true.
There's that.
That is true. Yeah.
Nintndo's fine though. Obviously, we're not bringing Nintendo. Nintendo's just they're rolling.
It's funny because Nintendo had that year. Basically, was it last year where they had like nothing? Like
2021 was bare.
And then this year they're just like, yeah, for whatever reason we just saved all of them for this year, and we're just dumping them out. So,
right.
Hey. All right, Sam. Well, I think that's gonna do it. We've covered all the meat. We've had some deep, passionate conversations about the industry and the community and all that good stuff. And I want to give a huge shout out to everyone who tuned in live. And if you're listening on audio services, thanks for listening. As a reminder, there will not be an episode of Xbox Chaturdays next week because your boy is on vacation. I'll be, hanging out near the Space Needle and all that good stuff. Sam, one more time for all the amazing people hanging out with us. Where can they get a hold of you?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Samuel Tolbert. For those listening, that's Tolbert. And you can find everything I'm writing over on Windows Central and its sister sites. Got some good stuff in the works. Might take a little time, but we got some good stuff cooking. Keep
your eyes peeled on old Sammy boy. We were talking about some stuff he's working on before the show that's going to be interesting, I think, for some people in the old Xbox community. But again, thanks so much for tuning in, and we will catch you not next week, but the week after. Take care, everybody.
Be kind.